This is Monica Perez, and we are here with our final installment of the reading and discussion of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So we normally do one book or chapter at a time. Today I have books 11 and 12. So I'm probably not going to indulge in too much chit chat, but I will indulge in a lot of chit chat. Same time, same place next week when Daniel Natal is going to join us. He actually did an audiobook of this Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And he is so smart, interesting, and funny. So I think we're going to get a lot out of that. And it'll be live so we can all join in the fun and pick his brain. So we better finish the book today. Here we go. Book 11. These are the properties of the rational soul. It sees itself, analyzes itself, makes itself such as it chooses. Itself reaps its own fruits. Whereas the fruits of the vegetable kingdom and the corresponding produce of animals are reaped by others, the soul obtains its own end, wherever the limit of life may be fixed. Not as in a dance and in a play and in such things, where the whole action is incomplete if anything cuts it short, but in every part and wherever it may be stopped, it makes what has been set before it full and complete, so that it can say, I have what is my own. And further, it traverses the whole universe and the surrounding void and surveys its form, and it extends itself into the infinity of time, and embraces and comprehends the periodic renovation of all things. And it comprehends that those who come after us will see nothing new, nor have those before us seen anything more. But in a manner, he who is 40 years old, if he has any understanding at all, has seen by virtue of the uniformity that prevails all things that have been and all that will be. Okay, so by the time you're 40, you've kind of cycled through everything there is to see. Maybe they probably started being adults much younger. Like we're physically adults at like 13. So if they were out there in the world at that point, yeah, by the time you're 40, and if lifespans were shorter, this too is a property of the rational soul. Love of one's neighbor and truth and modesty, and to value nothing more than itself, which is also the property of law. Thus, then, right reason differs not at all from the reason of justice. You will set little value on pleasant song and dancing and the pancratium, an ancient Greek athletic competition combining wrestling and boxing. If you will analyze the melody of the voice into its several sounds and ask yourself as to each, am I mastered by this? For you will be ashamed to confess it. The same holds for dancing. If at each movement and posture you will do a similar analysis, and the like also in the matter of the pancratium. In all things then, except virtue and the acts of virtue, remember to apply yourself to their several parts, and by this division to come to value them little, and apply this rule also to your whole life. Okay, one step at a time, I don't know. What a great soul is that which is ready at any requisite moment to be separated from the body and then to be extinguished or dispersed or continue to exist. By this readiness must come from a man's own judgment, but this readiness must come from man's own. So you have to be ready to continue to exist in the afterlife, to be dispersed into the great life continuum, or to just cease to exist. Be ready. Not from mere obstinacy, as with the Christians, but considerately and with dignity and in a way to persuade another without tragic show. Have I done something for the general interest? Well then, I have had my reward. Let this always be present to your mind and never stop doing such good. What is your art? To be good. And how is this accomplished? Well, except by general principles, some about the nature of the universe, and others about the proper constitution of man. At first, tragedies were brought on the stage as means of reminding men of the things that happen to them, and that it is according to nature for things to happen so. and that if you are delighted with what is shown on the stage, you should not be troubled with what takes place on the larger stage. For you see that these things must be gone through, and that even they bear them who cry out, O Cytheron, O Cytheron, Cytheron, Cithaeron. And indeed, some things are said well by the dramatic writers, especially the following: Me and my children, if the gods neglect, this has its reasons too. And again, we must not chafe and fret at that which happens, and reap life's harvest like the wheat's fruitful ear, and other things of the same kind. After tragedy, the old comedy was introduced, which had a magisterial freedom of speech, and by its very plainness of speaking was useful in reminding men to beware of insolence, and for this purpose, too, Diogenes used to take from these writers. But as to the middle comedy, which came next, observe what it was, and again for what object the new comedy was introduced, which gradually sank down into a mere mimic artifice. That some good things are said even by these writers, everybody knows. But the whole plan of such poetry and dramaturgy, to what end does it look? How plain does it appear that there is not another condition of life so well suited for philosophizing as this in which you now happen to be? A branch cut off from the adjacent branch must of necessity be cut off from the whole tree also. So too a man, when he is separated from another man, has fallen off from the whole social community. Now, as to a branch, another cuts it off, but a man by his own act separates himself from this neighbor, and when he hates him and turns away from him, and he does not know that he has at the same time cut himself off from the whole social system. Yet he has this privilege certainly from Zeus, who framed society, for it is in our power to grow again to that which is near to us, and again to become a part that helps to make up the whole. However, if this kind of separation happens often, it makes it difficult for the seceding part to be brought to unity and to be restored to its former condition. Finally, the branch that from the first grew together with the tree and has continued to have one life with it is not like that which has been cut off and then grafted onto it. For this is something like what the gardeners mean when they say it grows with the rest of the tree, but that it is not of one mind with it. Oh my gosh, that reminds me of my concept of heirloom wisdom. Like, you can't ban guns, have a couple of generations that have had no guns, and then have, well, I mean, you can, but then have total gun freedom, because you're going to have people who don't respect it, don't understand it. I mean, it's the same with preserving food and natural health and drugs and all of that stuff. If you sever the branch from the tree and then graft it back on later, it is going to be imperfect. It's not going to have that stability. As those who try to stand in your way when you are proceeding according to right reason will not be able to turn you aside from your proper action, so neither let them drive you from your benevolent feelings towards them, but be on your guard equally in both matters, not only in the matter of steady judgment and action, but also in the matter of gentleness toward those who try to hinder or otherwise trouble you. For this also is a weakness, to be vexed at them, as well as to be diverted from your course of action and to give way through fear. For both are equally deserters from their post, the man who does it through fear and the man who is alienated from him who is by nature a kinsman and a friend. There is no nature that is inferior to art, for the arts imitate the nature of things. But if this is so, that nature, which is the most perfect and the most comprehensive of all natures, cannot fall short of the skill of art. Now all arts do the inferior things for the sake of the superior. Therefore the universal nature does so too. And indeed, hence is the origin of justice, and in justice the other virtues have their foundation. For justice will not be observed if we either care for indifferent things or are easily deceived and careless and changeable. If the things do not come to you, the pursuit and avoidance of which disturb you, still in a manner you are seeking them out, let then your judgment about them be at rest, and they will remain quiet, and you will not be seen either pursuing or avoiding. The spherical form of the soul maintains its figure when it is neither extended toward any object nor contracted inward, neither dispersed nor sinking down, but is illuminated by light, by which it sees the truth of all things, and the truth that is in itself. Suppose any man shall despise me, let him look to that himself. But I will look to this, that I be not discovered doing or saying anything deserving of contempt. Shall any man hate me? That will be his affair. But I will be mild and benevolent toward every man, and ready to show even him his mistake, not reproachfully, nor yet as making a display of my endurance, but nobly and honestly, like the great Phocion, unless indeed he only assumed it. For the interior parts ought to be such, and a man ought to be seen by the gods, neither dissatisfied with anything nor complaining. For what evil is it to you if you are now doing what is agreeable to your own nature, and are satisfied with that which at this moment is suitable to the nature of the universe, since you are a human being placed at your post in order that what is for the common advantage may be done in some way? Men despise one another and flatter one another, and men wish to raise themselves above one another and crouch before one another. How unsound and insincere is he who says, I have determined to deal with you in a fair way. What are you doing, man? There is no occasion to give this notice. It will soon show itself by acts. The voice ought to be plainly written on the forehead. Such as a man's character is, he immediately shows it in his eyes, just as he who is beloved forthwith reads everything in the eyes of lovers. The man who is honest and good ought to be exactly like a man who smells strong, so that the bystander, as soon as he comes near him, must smell the odor, whether he chooses to or not. But the affectation of simplicity is like a crooked stick. Nothing is more disgraceful than a wolfish friendship, a false friendship. Avoid this most of all. The good and simple and benevolent show all these things in the eyes, and there is no mistaking it. So he says about the false friendship, like avoid that, but then he's also saying stuff like friends, neighbors, everything, like always be part of the social. Don't let people, don't judge people, like even if they're jerks, like what is it to you? Anyway, maybe he explains. As to living in the best way, this power is in the soul. If it be indifferent to things that are indifferent, and it will be indifferent if it looks on each of these things separately and all together, and if it remembers that not one of them produces in us an opinion about itself, nor comes to us, but these things remain immovable, and it is we ourselves who produce the judgments about them. And, as we may say, write them in ourselves, it being in our power not to write them, and it being in our power, if perchance these judgments have imperceptibly got admission to our minds, to wipe them out. And if we remember also that such attention will only be for a short time, and then life will be at an end. Besides, what trouble is there at all in doing this? For if these things are according to nature, rejoice in them, and they will be easy to you. But if contrary to nature, seek what is conformable to your own nature, and strive toward this, even if it brings no reputation, for every man is allowed to seek his own good. Consider whence each thing has come, of what it consists, and into what it changes, and what kind of thing it will be when it has changed, and that it will sustain no harm. If any have offended you, consider first, what is my relation to men? And that we are made for one another. And in another respect, I was made to be set over them as a ram over the flock or a bull over the herd. But examine the first principles from this. If all things are not mere atoms, it is nature that orders all things. If this is so, The inferior things exist for the sake of the superior, and these for the sake of one another. Second, consider what kind of men they are at the table, in bed, and so forth, and particularly under what compulsions of opinion they operate. And as to their acts, consider with what pride they do what they do. I'm thinking about this. I asked my son, I don't know why he knows about Egyptian or Roman history, whatever. I'm sure it's a hobby. I said, hey, we were taking a walk. It's like, tell me everything you know about Marcus Aurelius. Like, I have to probably raise my game if I'm talking to Daniel Natal. And he said, well, I just remember this one story where he caught his wife cheating on him. Her name was Faustina or something. Cheating on him with a gladiator. And I think he like cut the guy's head off right then and there, slit his throat right then and there. And I believe he made her finish. Really bizarre. So anyway, he doesn't seem like the most, even keeled guy. Kind of funny. I'll have to investigate that before we talk to Daniel. Third, that if men do rightly what they do, we ought not to be displeased. But if they do not do right, it is plain that they do so involuntarily and in ignorance. For as every soul is unwillingly deprived of the truth, so also is it unwillingly deprived of the power of behaving to each man according to his deserts. Accordingly, men are pained when they are called unjust, ungrateful, and greedy, and, in a word, wrongdoers to their neighbors. Fourth, consider that you also do many things wrong, and that you are a man like others. And even if you do abstain from certain faults, still you have the disposition to commit them, though either through cowardice or concern about reputation or some such mean motive, you abstain from such faults. Fifth, consider that you do not even understand whether men are doing wrong or not. For many things are done with a certain reference to circumstances, and in short, a man must learn a great deal to enable him to pass a correct judgment on another man's acts. That's a good point. Six, consider when you are much vexed or grieved that man's life is only a moment, and after a short time we are all laid out dead. This guy with the dead all the time. Seventh, that it is not men's acts that disturb us, for those acts have their foundation in men's ruling principles, but it is our opinions that disturb us. Take away these opinions then, and resolve to dismiss your judgment about an act as if it were something grievous, and your anger is gone. How then shall I take away these opinions? By reflecting that no wrongful act or another brings shame on you. For unless that which is shameful is alone bad, you also must of necessity do many things wrong and become a robber and everything else. I read, my uncle, who's a priest, who did my marriage ceremony, gave me, on the occasion of my marriage, a book called Refined by Love. And in the book, and it's clearly for like women in the 50s getting married when they were like 18 to some guy who wasn't perfect. And it said, yeah, just because he has like bad manners or manners not as good as you want, or he does something cringy or whatever it said, you're not responsible for that. You're just, and you have to trust people to know that. And you just are there to love him and learn from him and, whatever, mote and beam him. My hair's a little crazy. Anyway, eighth, consider how much more pain is brought on us by the anger and vexation caused by such acts than by the acts themselves at which we are angry and vexed. True that. Think about, whatever. I'm thinking of like false flags and 9/11 and October 7th and all this stuff. And like, think of the killing and suffering that was meted out in the name of retribution, even if those acts that were justified, are used to justify, actually happened, the retribution far, far outweighs them. And that's the concept of just war. You can't do that. Not okay. Anyway, ninth, consider that a good disposition is invincible if it is genuine and not an affected smile and acting a part. For what will the most violent man do to you if you continue to be of a kind disposition toward him, and if, as opportunity offers, you gently admonish him and calmly correct his errors at the very time when he was trying to do you harm, saying, "Not so, my child. We are constituted by nature for something else. I shall certainly not be injured, but you are injuring yourself, my child." And show him with gentle tact and by general principles that this is so, and that even bees do not do as he does, nor any animals that are formed by nature to be gregarious. But you must do this not in irony or by way of rebuke, but with kindly affection and without any bitterness at heart, not as from a master's chair, nor yet to impress the bystanders, but as if he were indeed alone, though others are present. I learned this. I had a producer at WSB, Christina, and I just would get so stressed about the calls and everything. And she said, "You get what you give." I mean, that sounds like platitudinous advice, whatever. You get what you give. And because of the radio show, I did have opportunities to put stuff into practice and actually see how that worked. And I'll tell you, if you really viewed it with love, didn't let agitating, insulting, get to you, just listen to what they said and just tell them your opinion and whatever, man, people just calm right down. It was really crazy. And it took practice, and I didn't do it out of generosity or charity. I did it because I could not deal with these people getting pissed at me. And boy, was she right. And then it helped my nerves because I knew I could handle that kind of thing. Okay. Remember these 9 rules as if you had received them as a gift from the muses, and begin at last to be a man while you live. But you must equally avoid flattering men and being vexed at them, for both are unsocial and lead to harm. And let this truth be present to you in the excitement of anger, that to be moved by passion is not manly. Is this not the guy who slit his own throat? His cuckold's throat or whatever. Let this truth be present to you in the excitement of anger, that to be moved by passion is not manly, but that mildness and gentleness, as they are more agreeable to human nature, so also are they more manly. And he who possesses these qualities possesses strength, nerves, and courage, and not the man who is subject to fits of passion and discontent. For in the degree to which a man's mind is nearer to freedom from all passion, in the same degree also it is nearer to strength. And as the sense of pain is a characteristic of weakness, so also is anger. For he who yields to pain and he who yields to anger are both wounded and both submit. But if you will receive also a 10th present from the leader of the Muses, Apollo, and it is this, that to expect bad men not to do wrong is madness. For he who expects this desires an impossibility. But to allow men to behave so to others and to expect them not to do you any wrong is irrational and tyrannical. There are 4 principal aberrations of the superior faculty against which you should be constantly on your guard. And when you have detected them, you should wipe them out and say on each occasion thus, "This thought is not necessary. This tends to destroy social union. This which you are going to say comes not from the real thoughts, for you should consider it among the most absurd of things for a man not to speak from his real thoughts. But the 4th is when you shall reproach yourself for anything, for this is an evidence of the diviner part within you being overpowered and yielding to the less honorable and to the perishable part, the body, and to its gross pleasures." Wow, that's funny because I was thinking about 2 things happened. Maybe it was just one thing. I was watching Beckett, the movie with Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton. It was good. And Burton says something, he's Beckett, and he's kneeling, he's like, please, like, make me be worthy of this office. I, succumb to the pleasures of the flesh and um, whatever. I don't know what he was saying about other stuff. And I thought, okay, maybe for 2026, I should, uh, I don't know what, be a little more moderate in those things. But I also had the thought, I think it was at church, I think the Mass was like the Feast of the Holy Family or something. I can't remember what made me think this, but I thought, I'm often tormented by stupid stuff I've said, like yesterday and 30 years ago. Like I can't get up. And I realize that is pride. So it's not so much that I should like pray that people forget the stupid stuff I did, but pray that I accept that I say stupid stuff, because I mean, I'm a little, I think I say more stupid things than most people, but just it's pride. And he's adding a different wrinkle here, I think, which is don't even own it. You did something stupid that's against your nature. And of course you wouldn't do something stupid and against your nature, like in a willful way. It was just an aberration, and you should forgive yourself of that and forgive other people. I have to say that there are people who behave badly, and if you forgive them and forgive them and forgive them, you may be inviting more offenses against you, more damage. I mean, I'd not fully get from him how to deal with that. But, well, let's keep reading. The aerial part and all the fiery parts that are mingled in you, though by nature they have an upward tendency, still in obedience to the disposition of the universe, they are overpowered here in the compound mass, the body. And also the whole of the earthy part in you and the watery, though their tendency is downward, still are raised up and occupy a position that is not their natural one. In this manner, then, the elemental parts obey the universal, for when they have been fixed in any place perforce, they remain there until again the universal shall sound the signal for dissolution. Is it not then strange that only your intelligent part should be disobedient and discontented with its own place, and yet no force is imposed on it, but only those things that are conformable to its nature? Still, for the movement toward injustice and intemperance and to anger and grief and fear is nothing else than the act of one who deviates from nature. And also when the ruling faculty is discontented with anything that happens, then too it deserts its post, for it is constituted for piety and reverence toward the gods no less than for justice. For these qualities also are comprehended under the generic term of contentment with the constitution of things, and indeed they are prior to acts of justice. He who has not one and always the same object in life cannot be one and the same all through his life. But what I have said is not enough unless this also is added, what this object ought to be. For as there is not the same opinion about all the things that in some way or other are considered by the majority to be good, but only about some certain things, that is, things that concern the common interest, so also ought we to propose to ourselves an object that shall be of a common kind, social and political. For he who directs all his own efforts to this object will make all his acts alike, and thus will always be the same. Think of the country mouse and of the town mouse, and of the alarm and trepidation of the town mouse. Socrates used to call the opinions of the many by the name of lamiae, ghouls, bugbears to frighten children. Uh-oh, there's going to be an elusive Mr. Perez sighting. Oh, there he goes. Socrates, yes, the Lacedaemonians at their public spectacles used to set seats in the shade for strangers, but they themselves sat down anywhere. Socrates excused himself to Perdiccas for not going to him, saying, "It is because I would not perish by the worst of all ends. That is, I would not receive a favor and then be unable to return it." In the writings of the Ephesians, there was this precept constantly to think of one of the men of former times who practiced virtue. The Pythagoreans bid us in the morning look to the heavens that we may be reminded of those bodies that continually do the same things and in the same manner perform their work, and also be reminded of their purity and nudity. For there is no veil over a star. Consider what a man Socrates was when he dressed himself in a skin after Xanthippe had taken his cloak and gone out, and what Socrates said to his friends who were ashamed of him and drew back from him when they saw him dressed thus. Neither in writing nor in reading will you be able to lay down rules for others before you shall have first learned to obey rules yourself. Much more is this so in life. You are a slave. Free speech is not for you. And my heart laughed within. And virtue they will curse, speaking harsh words. These are all quotes. To look for the fig in winter is a madman's act. Such is he who looks for his child when he may no longer have one. When a man kisses his child, said Epictetus, he should whisper to himself, tomorrow perchance you will die. But those are words of bad omen. Am I right, Stella? No word is a word of bad omen, said Epictetus, that expresses any work of nature, or if it is so, it is also a word of bad omen to speak of the ears of corn being reaped. The unripe grape, the ripe bunch, the dried grape, all are changes, not into nothing, but into something that exists not yet. According to Epictetus, no man can rob us of our free will. That is true. Epictetus also said, a man must discover an art or rules with respect to giving his assent, and in respect to his movements, he must be careful that they be made with regard to circumstances, that they be consistent with social interests, that they have regard to the value of the object, and as to sensual desire, he should altogether keep away from it, and as to avoidance, aversion, he should not show it with respect to any of the things that are not in our power. The dispute, then, he said, is not about any common matter, but about being mad or not. Socrates used to say, what do you want? Souls of rational men or irrational? Souls of rational men. Of what rational men? Sound or unsound? Sound. Why then do you not seek for them? Because we have them. Why then do you fight and quarrel? That was the end of book 11. And book 12 is, yeah, let's do it. And I might have to switch it around. Book 12. All those things at which you wish to arrive by a circuitous road, you can have now if you do not refuse them to yourself. That is to say, if you will take no notice of all the past and trust the future of providence and direct the present in the way of piety and justice, piety that you may be content with the lot that is assigned to you, for nature designed it for you and you for it, justice that you may always speak the truth freely and without disguise, and do the things that are agreeable to law and according to the worth of each. And let neither another man's wickedness hinder you, nor opinion, nor voice, nor yet the sensations of the poor flesh that has grown about you, for the passive part will look to this. If then, whatever the time may be when you shall be near to your departure, neglecting everything else, you shall respect only your ruling faculty and the divinity within you. And if you shall be afraid, not because you must sometimes cease to live, But if you shall fear never to have begun to live according to nature, then you will be a man worthy of the universe that has produced you, and you will cease to be a stranger in your native land, and to wonder at things that happen daily as if they were something unexpected, and to be dependent on this or that. God sees the minds, ruling principles, of all men bared of the material vesture and rind and impurities. For with his intellectual part alone, he touches the intelligence only, which has flowed and been derived from himself into these bodies. And if you also use yourself to do this, you will rid yourself of much trouble. For he who has little regard for the poor flesh that envelops him surely will not trouble himself over clothing and dwelling and fame and other such externals and show. You are composed of three things: body, breath, or life, and intelligence. Of these, the first two are yours insofar it is your duty to take care of them, but the third alone is truly yours. Therefore, if you shall separate from yourself, that is, from your understanding, whatever others do, say, and whatever you have done or said yourself, and whatever future things trouble you because they may happen, and whatever in the body that envelops you, or in the breath, the life, which is by nature associated with the body, is attached to you independent of your will, and whatever the external circumambient vortex whirls around you, so that the intellectual power, exempt from the things of fate, can live pure and free by itself, doing what is just and accepting what happens and saying the truth. If you will separate, I say, from this ruling faculty the things that are attached to it by the impressions of sense and the things of time to come and of time that is past, and will make yourself like Empedocles' sphere, all round and in its joyous rest reposing. And if you shall strive to live what is really your life, that is, the present, then you will be able to pass the portion of life that remains for you up to the time of your death, free from perturbations, nobly and obedient to your own daemon, to the God that is within you. I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. If then a God or a wise teacher should present himself to a man and bid him to think of nothing and to design nothing that he would not express as soon as he conceived it, he could not endure it even for a single day. So it is clear that we accord much more respect to what our neighbors think of us than to what we think of ourselves. How can it be that the gods, after having arranged all things well and benevolently for mankind, have overlooked this alone, that some men, and very good men, and men who, as we may say, have had most communion with the divinity, and through pious acts and religious observances have been most intimate with the divinity, should, when once dead, have no second existence but be wholly extinguished? But if this is so, be assured that if it ought to have been otherwise, the gods would have done it. For if it were just, it would also be possible. And if it were according to nature, nature would have had it so. But because it is not so, if in fact it is not so, be assured that it ought not to have been so. For you can easily see that in this inquiry you are disputing with the deity, and we should not thus dispute with the gods unless they were most excellent and most just. But if this is so, they would not have allowed anything in the ordering of the universe to be neglected unjustly and irrationally. Practice that also wherein you have no expectation of success. For even the left hand, which is ineffectual for all other things for want of practice, holds the bridle more vigorously than the right hand, for it has been practiced in this. Consider in what condition both in body and soul a man should be when he is overtaken by death, and consider the shortness of life, the boundless abyss of time past and future, the feebleness of all matter. Contemplate the formative principles, forms of things, bare of their coverings, the purposes of actions. Consider what pain is, what pleasure is, and death and fame. See who is to blame for a man's inner unrest, how no man is hindered by another, that everything is opinion. In the application of your principles, you must be like the Pancratiast. Pancratiast. Did we already say what that was? The wrestling boxing thing? Not like the gladiator. And this is a little footnote. Or like the prize fighter, not like the duelist. Like a prize fighter, not like a dueler. A duel, like a fencer. For the latter lays aside the blade he uses and takes it up again. But the former always has his hand and needs only to clench it. Oh, so it's part of you. Okay. See what things are in themselves, dividing them into matter, form, and purpose. What a power man has to do nothing except what God will approve and to accept all that God may give him. With respect to that which happens conformably to nature, we ought to blame neither gods, for they do nothing wrong either voluntarily or involuntarily, nor men, for they do nothing wrong except involuntarily. Consequently, we should blame nobody, except for if he's screwing your wife, then you have to slit his throat. I got to confirm that really happened before I slander this guy. How ridiculous and what a stranger he is who is surprised at anything that happens in life. Either there is a fatal necessity and invincible order, or a kind providence, or a confusion without a purpose and without a director. If then there is an invincible necessity, why do you resist? But if there is a providence that allows itself to be propitiated, make yourself worthy of the help of the divinity. But if there is a confusion without a governor, be content that in such a tempest you have yourself a certain ruling intelligence. And even if the tempest carries you away, let it carry away the poor flesh, the poor breath, everything else, for the intelligence at least it will not carry away. Does the light of the lamp shine without losing its splendor until it is extinguished? And shall the truth that is in you and justice and temperance be extinguished before your death? When a man appears to have done something wrong, say, how then do I know if this is a wrongful act? And even if he has done wrong, how do I know that he has not condemned himself, in effect tearing his own face? Consider that he who would not have had the bad man do wrong is like the man who would not have had the fig tree secrete acrid juice in its fruit, and would not have infants cry and the horse neigh, and whatever else must of necessity be. For what must a man do who has such a character? If then you are irritable, cure this disposition. I always think that. If you don't like something about yourself, don't go to a psychiatrist, just fix it. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could use some help. I'm a big fan of getting help you need. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. For let your impulse be in your own power. In everything, always observe what the thing is that produces for you an appearance, and resolve it by dividing it into the formal, the material, the purpose, and the time within which it must end. Perceive at last that you have in you something better and more divine than the things that cause the various affects, and as it were, pull you by the strings. What is there now in my mind? Is it fear or suspicion or desire or anything of the kind? First, do nothing inconsiderately or without a purpose. Second, make your acts refer to nothing else but a social end. Consider that before long you will be nobody and nowhere, nor will any of the things exist that you now see, nor any of those who are now living. For all things are formed by nature to change and be turned and to perish in order that other things in continuous succession may exist. I'm telling you, it has given me great comfort after having read this with y'all about no matter what happens, and I know it's not great, this AI thing is bad, and all that that implies, the technate, the technocracy, the dark enlightenment, all of it, all of it, all of it. Bad, bad, bad. Really, like I feel like it's dehumanizing, and if they have a way to change our very genetics, then maybe it's hopeless for humanity. Maybe this is the beginning of the end. But no matter whether it is or not, whether it's the beginning of the end or just the beginning of this cycle, it will end. It will come to an end. Consider that everything is opinion, and opinion is in your power. Take away then, when you choose, your opinion, and like a mariner who has rounded the headland, you will find calm, everything stable, and a waveless bay. Any one activity, whatever it may be, when it has ceased at its proper time, suffers no evil because it has ceased, nor does he who has done this act suffer any evil because the act has ceased. In like manner, then, the whole that consists of all the acts, which is our life, suffers no evil if it has ceased at its proper time, nor does the agent suffer in that it has ceased to act. Similarly, then, if life, that sum total of all our acts, ceases in its own good time, it suffers no ill from this very fact, nor is he ill served who has brought this chain of acts to an end in its own due time. The due season and the terminus are fixed by universal nature, at times even by our individual nature, as with old age, the constant change of whose parts keeps the whole universe ever youthful and in its prime. All that is advantageous to the whole is ever fair and in its bloom. The ending of life, then, is not only no evil to the individual, for it brings him no disgrace, if in fact it is both outside our choice and not inimical to the general weal, but a good, since it is timely for the universe, bears its share in it, and is borne along with it. For then is he who is borne along on the same path as God, and born in his judgment toward the same things. Indeed, a man God-born. You must have these three principles in readiness. First, do nothing, either inconsiderately or otherwise, than as justice herself would act. And with respect to what may happen to you from without, consider that it happens either by chance or according to providence, and you must neither blame chance nor accuse providence. Second, consider what every being is from the seed to the time of its receiving a soul, and from the reception of a soul to the giving back of the same, and of what things every being is compounded, and into what things it is resolved. Third, if you should suddenly be raised up above the earth, and should look down on human things and observe their infinite variety, you will despise them. If at that time you should also see at a glance how great is the number of beings who dwell all around in the air and in the ether, consider that as often as you should be raised up, you would see the same things, sameness of form, and shortness of duration. Are these things to be proud of? Cast away opinion, and you are saved. Who then hinders you from casting it away? When you are troubled about anything, you have forgotten that all things happen according to the universal nature, and forgotten that a man's wrongful act is nothing to you. And further, you have forgotten that everything that happens always happens so, and will happen so, and now happens so everywhere. Forgotten, too, how close is the kinship between a man and the whole human race, for it is a community not of a little blood or seed, but of intelligence. And you have forgotten this, too, that every man's intelligence is a god, and is an emanation from the deity, and forgotten this, that nothing is a man's own, but that his child and his body and his very soul came from the deity. Forgotten this, that everything is opinion. And lastly, you have forgotten that every man lives the present time only and loses only this. Constantly recall those who have complained greatly about anything, those who have been most conspicuous by the greatest fame or misfortunes or enmities of fortunes of any kind. Then think, where are they all now? Smoke and ash and a tale, or not even a tale. Take any instance of this sort, how Fabius Catilinus lived in the country, and Lucius Lupus in his gardens, and Stertinius at Baiae, and Tiberius at Capreae, and Velius Rufus, or Rufus at Velia, and in fine, think of the eager pursuit of anything conjoined with pride, and how worthless everything is after which men violently strain, and how much more philosophical it is for a man in the opportunities presented to him to show himself just, temperate, obedient to the gods, and to do this with all simplicity. For the pride that is proud of its want of pride is the most intolerable of all. That is what I don't like about Opus Dei. Like, I think Opus Dei definitely, I think it was created by, it wasn't, there's different theories of when, how, why, and by whom it was created, but it was meant, I think, to make the Spanish men work a little harder. So they had to kind of reintroduce the ideas of materialism and pride and stuff into like the Southern Catholic culture, Southern European Catholic culture. And you can have like maybe this isn't a feature of them, but I'm thinking of this like over piety. Maybe that's not an Opus Dei thing. They do have pride and stuff. Or I should say, whatever. I don't know. I shouldn't judge, but this idea that I've noticed this, people are very pious or self-sacrificing or whatever, or overly modest, are proud of it. And I hate that. He says it's the worst of all. I totally agree. Hate that. Hate that the most. To those who ask, where have you seen the gods, or how do you comprehend that they exist and so worship them? I answer, oh, this is going to be interesting. Why do you believe in God? In the first place, they may be seen even with the eyes. Here's a footnote. According to Haynes, the stars were gods in the Stoic view. Interesting. In the second place, neither have I seen even my own soul, and yet I honor it. Thus then, with respect to the gods, from what I constantly experience of their power, from this I comprehend that they exist, and I venerate them. Yeah, I would say creation itself implies a creator. The security of life is this, to examine everything all through, what it is itself, what is its material, what the formal part, with all your soul, to do justice and to say the truth. What remains except to enjoy life by joining one good thing to another, so as not to leave even the smallest intervals between. There is one light of the sun, though it is interrupted by walls, mountains, and other things infinite. There is one common substance, though it is distributed among countless bodies that have their separate qualities. There is one soul, though it is distributed among infinite natures and individual circumscriptions or individuals. There is one intelligent soul, though it seems to be divided. Now, in the things that have been mentioned, all the other parts, such as those that are air and matter, are without sensation and have no ties of affinity. And yet even these parts are knit together by the faculty of intelligence and the gravitation that draws them together. But intellect, in a peculiar manner, tends to, I think my hall pass to do this show ended like the top of the hour. But intellect in a peculiar manner tends to that which is, well, that's why we have more like machine noises in the background. Anyway, but intellect in a peculiar manner tends to that which is of the same kin and combines with it, and the feeling of social fellowship is not interrupted. What do you wish? To continue to exist? Well, do you wish to have sensation, movement, growth, and then again to cease to grow? To use your speech, to think? What is there of all these things that seems to you worth desiring? But if it is easy to set little value on all these things, turn to that which remains, which is to follow reason and God. But it is inconsistent and honoring reason and God to be troubled, because by death a man will be deprived of the other things. How small a part of the boundless and unfathomable time is assigned to every man, for it is very soon swallowed up in the eternal. And how small a part of the whole substance, and how small a part of the universal soul, and on what a small clod of the whole earth you creep. Reflecting on all this, consider nothing to be great except to act as your nature leads you, and to endure that which the common nature brings. How does the ruling faculty make use of itself? For all lies in this. But everything else, whether it is in the power of your will or not, is only lifeless ashes and smoke. This reflection is most adapted to move us to contempt of death, that even those who think pleasure to be a good and pain and evil still have despised it. Not even death can bring terror to him who regards that alone as good, which comes in due season, and to whom it is all one whether his acts in conformity to right reason are few or many, and a matter of indifference whether he look upon the world for a longer or a shorter time. Man, you have been a citizen in this great state, the world. What difference does it make to you whether for 5 years or 100? For under its laws, equal treatment is meted out to all. What hardship, then, is there in being banished from the city, not by a tyrant or an unjust judge, but by nature, who brought you into it? So might a praetor who has employed an actor dismiss him from the stage. But I have not played my 5 acts, only 3. Very possible. But in life, 3 acts are the whole drama. For what shall be a complete drama is determined by him who was once the cause of its composition, and now of its dissolution. But you are the cause of neither. Depart then satisfied, for he also who releases you is satisfied. Well, I hope you are satisfied with our ending this. I blurred my background. By ending this book as the last, I believe this is the last show of the year. And this was a good one. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation about this book next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Happy New Year.